Good afternoon. This is Dennis Spellman with Covering Katie. You know, there will be $2 trillion of new money coming into the economy very shortly because of the stimulus package that is designed to help people out. It's designed to help people in their worst time of need, especially business owners. And already there are scam artists that are out there trying to grab your money and take it away for themselves. U.S. Attorney Ryan Patrick joins us now live on Covering Katie to tell us what's going on and give us some warnings and tell us a few things about how we can keep the scammers from taking this money away. Good afternoon, Attorney Patrick.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're going to have, and do have scam artists, these scumbags running around and usually using all sorts of digital means to try to get into people's personal information in their bank accounts. And this is unfortunately any time of disaster, whether it's an earthquake, but here we have a worldwide pandemic. And in the United States in particular, these fraudulent call centers in particular are going to be working overtime around the world, and most of them are international, but we do have some domestic operators as well. They're going to be cold calling, sending text messages, spam emails, maybe even going door to door, trying to get people's information to get into their bank accounts. These scam artists, it's not about the check that's coming. It's about the bank accounts that those checks are going into. That's the information they want, and that's what's dangerous.
You know, it's interesting. I've already received one of those emails. I got it this morning. Of course, I just went ahead and deleted it. Maybe I should have saved it and sent it on to you, but you know what you're up against, and tell people what to look out for. I mean, you sent out a press release earlier this week, and we put the story up immediately explaining to people what to look for. Can you tell us what some of those things are?
Unfortunately, these scammers are going to come in all shapes and sizes and all different forms of entry into people's lives. The most common way is going to be cold calls. You're going to receive calls mainly on your cell phone. You could get them on a home phone if you have one still, but you're going to get these phone calls. And many people identify these right away as these scam phone calls. Sometimes, unfortunately, they spoof the number, which is your caller ID might show. The number may not be right, it could be, but may show the name of a legitimate federal or state agency. Oftentimes the phone numbers, I get these all the time, where my area code and the first 3 digits of my phone number are the same. And they're going to call and they're going to ask for all sorts of information. They're going to say they're from the IRS, and your check's not going to come unless you give us this information. Oh, you're getting a check, but we'd love to direct deposit. Can you please give us your bank account, your routing information, your social security number, your mom's maiden name? They're going to ask for all this sorts of information. They're going to be phone calls, probably, I would suspect, if they've not already started, to small businesses on, spoofing SBA loan officers. Veterans get these calls from people claiming they're with the Veterans Administration. And for years and years, we've seen these calls coming from people claiming they're with the Marshal Service, that you're going to get arrested unless you give us this information. From immigration authorities, you're going to be deported if you don't give us this information. And so we know these scams are out there. And unfortunately, the Houston area has been designated as an elder fraud task force city, as a hotspot. We're one of 6 or 8 cities in the country that has a very high percentage of elder fraud. And we know that these types of scams that are going to be popping up and becoming more commonplace right now because of the amount of money coming from the federal government, along with the elder fraud part, the Houston area in particular is very susceptible to this. And we want to make sure people understand what could be coming. And the overall message is, because the vast majority of these scam artists are going to use phone calls, just hang up the phone. Don't talk to them. Even if you know it's a scam, just hang up the phone. There's no reason to talk to them. There's no reason to engage with them. And here's the biggest key. No federal agency and no state agency is ever going to call, email, or text you asking for your personal information. It's never going to happen.
All right.
And if for some reason you think it is a legitimate phone call or message, hang up and look up that agency's number on your own and call them back. Don't call back the number that message left for you.
He is Ryan Patrick. He is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Texas. And one thing that really jumped out at me in the press release that you sent out earlier this week was everyone receiving a COVID-19 related economic impact payment from the government is at risk. I don't know that I've ever received an email from a law enforcement agency saying that everyone is at risk. This is serious stuff, isn't it?
This is very serious. And here's why we say everyone is at risk. just about everyone in the country, except for those in the highest tax brackets, generally speaking, everyone in the country is going to be receiving a check or a direct deposit, which means scammers can call anyone in the country and have a really, really high percentage shot of being able to talk to somebody who knows they're getting some sort of financial assistance in the mail. And so the things to look out for is because a lot of this ties back to what your tax returns were, 2 years ago. And if you're set up for direct deposit for any sort of refund, you're going to get a direct deposit. That's how you're going to get the money. But some people could get checks in the mail. Look, these scammers are going to send checks to everybody. I say everybody. Many people are going to get these fraudulent checks. They're going to look different. They're going to kind of look like real checks. But here's a great tip off. If it's not a round number, there's cents at the end of it. It's a strange number of dollar amount, and there will likely be a phone number or an email address to say, hey, to release the rest of your money, call us, and we'll direct deposit the rest of it. Look, you're only limited by your imagination on the kind of garbage that these scumbags are going to pull on people and the message they're going to try to put out there. Again, this isn't about the $1,200 checks. This is about getting into your bank account and identity theft. And unfortunately, what happens is many of these very sophisticated groups that are doing this, they're all overseas. Matter of fact, my office, we took down one of the largest Indian-based call centers in the world. I believe it's the largest of these types of scams that was ever taken down by the federal government. This stretched all over the United States with local couriers and runners and people moving the money around, and massive professional call centers that were using their excess time and their excess capacity in making these scam phone calls. So these are very sophisticated organizations. They're not stupid. They know exactly what they need, and as soon as they get it, they're out. And what's really devastating to people's bank accounts and their livelihoods, Dennis, is once they get that information, even if they hang up the phone and go, I shouldn't have given that, and they try to call their credit card companies, they try to call their bank accounts, their banks to lock down their bank accounts, that money could be gone. And it's usually wired overseas into countries we don't have good law enforcement relationships with, and it's incredibly difficult to get that money back. So people need to be very vigilant on the front end. Do not give your personal information to people over the phone or through emails at all. Just don't do it.
Look, I know you're doing interviews with other media outlets and you're trying your hardest to get this word out today, and I commend you for that. So I won't keep you much longer, but I do have one quick question that has to do with the elderly. There are a lot of middle-aged folks that are watching this who have parents that are elderly. They grew up in a different time, right? They grew up in a time when if you were told that this is a law enforcement agency calling, you just naturally believed it. What do you have? What suggestions do you have for people who are concerned about their elderly parents being scammed by these folks?
Look, I'm not going to endorse any of these fraud alert companies or anything like that. That is a way to help protect yourself. Certainly reach out to the banks where folks' parents may do their banking. Maybe reach out to them and say, what would you suggest? What are ways that potentially we can put some fraud alerts on their accounts? Locking down credit cards, doing different things like that. Anything to sort of, make those accounts as safe as possible as those companies allow, but really just having a very blunt conversation. No one from the federal or state government is going to call and ask for your bank account or your personal information. If they do, it's a scam. Hang up the phone. Take their name, take their number, find out what agency they claim they're calling from, and we can always look them up. You can always look up the local IRS office. You can always look up the local VA or SBA, or state attorney general's office phone number, and we can call them and find out, what that call was about, if it's even legitimate. So it's really about education. That's what we're trying to do, because we may be able to catch the bad guys, or one of my colleagues around the country, the 93 U.S. attorneys, one of us may catch the bad guys, but getting that money back is incredibly difficult, and it's a long process. And identity theft can really, really mess up somebody's financial situation, their credit reports. I mean, it really can be devastating. That's what we're trying to get the message out. So again, hang up the phone, don't respond. But if you do get these phone calls, we would welcome the tips. So there's the National Disaster Fraud Relief Hotline. Usually it's used during hurricane season. It's run out of Baton Rouge. LSU students, I think, usually man the phones, but it's been activated for this nationwide. And as those tips come in, those tips are important because that script that the scam artist is using, the phone number they called from, may already have been reported from another part of the country. So as those tips come in, that center, they have some very sophisticated software programs that then collate all that information and send those leads out to the to the city or the agency that may already have an investigation started to be able to start to put those pieces together. So they can email those tips to disaster@leo.gov or just call the National Disaster Fraud Relief Hotline. And I'm happy to give that number, Dennis. It is.
Go right ahead. Take
Sure.
I appreciate
It's
the information.
Sure. It's 1-866-720-5721. That is a trusted phone number you can call and give these tips to these fraud tips. The Federal Trade Commission works really well with us. They sort of run the back end scene of this. This is a Department of Justice phone number. We're working with many agencies. Dennis, we've got Secret Service involved, Small Business Association, Medicare, Medicaid, fraud investigators. And then we've also, that number can also be, well, we get tips, and we have gotten tips on people hoarding and price gouging of protective medical equipment and other things related to the disaster response. So it's really, it's one number, one email address where people can go and report these tips to us.
When the money comes out, the scam artists are out there to try to steal it from you. He is U.S. Attorney Ryan Patrick from the Southern District of Texas, talking to us about the scams that are already started and are going to continue once this $2 trillion of revenue gets pumped into our economy as part of the stimulus package from Washington. Thank you for joining us today, Ryan. We wish you the best and all great advice, and you're welcome to come back on anytime here on Covering Katie.